Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Student loans, they feel like such a modern problem, but the thing is, they actually have this really long history going way back. So we've got some fascinating sources here to dig into today, and we're going to try to trace how we got from like post-World War II anxieties to the crazy complex system that we have right now.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that, before World War II, college was really just for the elite. I mean, less than 3% of Americans had a college degree. It was just so expensive, and most jobs didn't even require it.
Yeah, total different world, right?
Mm.
And then World War II happens. Everything changes. Millions of veterans come home, and all of a sudden the government has this huge challenge. Like, what do we do with all these people needing jobs?
Oh, yeah, and the Great Depression was still pretty fresh in everyone's mind, so there was a real fear of, another economic disaster. The government had to figure out a way to keep the economy going and avoid massive unemployment.
And that's where the GI Bill comes in, right?
Mm.
Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944. This
Yeah.
thing totally changed higher education in America.
Oh, absolutely it did. The GI Bill gave veterans money for housing and employment insurance, and probably most importantly, education. It was huge for so many veterans who all of a sudden had this chance to go to college. I mean, most of them would never have even thought about it before the war.
So we see this big jump in enrollment. But one of the sources you gave me points out that the GI Bill, it had its problems too.
Yeah, for sure. You see, the GI Bill, despite being, groundbreaking, it also had a lot of inequality built into it. Black veterans and women were mostly left out, so it actually ended up making existing inequalities in education even worse.
It's almost like we're seeing the start of some of the systemic problems that we're still dealing with today.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder if the goal was really to create a more equal society through education. Did the GI Bill actually succeed? It's definitely something to keep in mind.
Okay, so we've got this surge in college enrollment because of the GI Bill, but then things get even more interesting. Picture this. It's a Friday night in 1957, and future President Lyndon B. Johnson is at his ranch in Texas when the news breaks. The Soviet Union has launched Sputnik, the first artificial satellite.
And remember, this is like the peak of the Cold War. The US and the Soviet Union are locked in this intense rivalry. So Sputnik wasn't just a scientific achievement. It was a huge propaganda win for the Soviets and a big hit to America's ego.
Like the ultimate wake-up call,
Mhm.
right? All of a sudden, there's this feeling that America is falling behind, not just in the space race, but in science and technology in general.
Exactly. This idea of a technology gap created this national obsession with education, especially in STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math. The government realized that they needed a highly educated workforce to compete economically and to keep up in terms of national security.
And this is where Lyndon B. Johnson comes in, a man who was really shaped by his own experiences with education.
Yeah, Johnson's background is important. He grew up poor, and he saw education as his way out. He even had to take out a student loan, which was very rare back then. And that experience really stuck with him.
So when he sees Sputnik up there, it's not just about a satellite, it's about the future of America.
Totally. The launch of Sputnik and Johnson's own strong belief in education led to a really important moment, the National Defense Education Act of 1958. This act was passed because of those Cold War anxieties, and it created the very first federal student loan program.
So this event that seems totally unrelated to student loans, the launch of a satellite, ends up setting off this chain of events that shapes how we pay for college for generations.
It just shows you how things that seem totally separate can have these huge ripple effects. But like the GI Bill, this new program also had its problems. It mostly focused on high-achieving students, often white males, who were going into fields the government considered important for national defense.
So again, we see how even when access to education is expanded, it doesn't always mean equal opportunity for everyone. It's a pattern we'll keep seeing as we go deeper into the story.
So we left off with the National Defense Education Act and the first federal student loan program. Now we're moving into the 1960s. Things are changing fast. The Civil Rights Movement, the Vietnam War, and of course Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society.
Yeah, it was a turbulent time.
Yeah.
And education was like a central part of Johnson's vision for a better America. He really believed that everyone should have a chance to go to college no matter where they came from.
Right, absolutely. He was famous for saying, education is the key to opportunity. And he meant it.
So that's when he pushed for the Higher Education Act of 1965.
Right.
This is a big expansion of federal aid for students, grant scholarships, and of course, student loans.
You got it. The Higher Education Act was huge. It made college possible for so many more Americans. But it also brought some new challenges. One of the sources you gave me talked about how Johnson had this problem. How do you pay for all this new education without creating a giant deficit?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I remember reading in one of the articles you sent that Johnson was a Pretty clever politician. He found a way around it.
He sure did. He managed to convince banks to get involved in student loans. And banks weren't really thrilled about it at first. But Johnson found a way to sweeten the deal. He promised that the government would guarantee the loans. So if students didn't pay back, the banks wouldn't lose any money.
So the government became the ultimate cosigner.
Hmm.
It's like they were telling the banks, go ahead, lend money to these students. We'll cover you if anything goes wrong.
Exactly. And that was a major turning point. It brought private banks right into the heart of the student loan system, and it made getting a loan for college a lot easier. And that led to even more people going to college.
But just because it's easy to get a loan doesn't mean college is affordable. In fact, you could argue that it actually made things worse in the long run.
That's a really important point, and a lot of your sources bring it up. You see, when student loans became easier to get, guess what happened? Tuition went up. Colleges realized students had more money, so they raised their prices.
So it's this crazy cycle. More loans mean higher tuition, which means students need even more loans.
Classic unintended consequences. And it wasn't just the regular colleges raising prices. This was also when for-profit colleges started popping up everywhere. They often targeted low-income students and minorities, promising them a better life through education.
And these for-profit schools, they relied heavily on student loans, right? They knew students could get the money no matter what, and they didn't always care if those students actually got good jobs after graduating.
You got it. That raises a whole bunch of ethical questions about these for-profit schools and whether they were really helping their students. And we can talk about that another time.
Okay, so we've got tuition going through the roof, the rise of for-profit colleges, and this whole student loan system that's getting more and more complicated and tangled up with private interests. And then to top it all off, we hit the 1970s, inflation, unemployment, the energy crisis. The economy is a mess.
And remember, the big idea back then was that the government wasn't very good at handling things like loans. So instead of making things simpler, they decided to create Sallie Mae.
Sallie Mae. The name that brings back memories for a lot of us. What exactly was Sallie Mae's role in all this?
Well, it started in 1973. It was this weird thing called a quasi-public agency. Basically, it was a mix of government and private business. It became the middleman between the government and the banks. The Treasury Department would give money to Sallie Mae, and Sallie Mae would give it to the banks to make student loans. Sounds complicated, right?
Super complicated. And get this, the shareholders in Sallie Mae were banks and schools. Talk about a conflict of interest.
Yeah, it shows how financial incentives can really shape policy. Banks and schools had a reason to want students to borrow more money, and Sallie Mae, with the government backing them, made it all too easy.
So instead of making college more affordable, the system was actually making the problem worse.
Yeah.
It's like a train that's going too fast, and it's only going to get faster in the years to come.
Uh,
Okay, so we've gone from the post-World War II era all the way to the creation of Sallie Mae, and we've seen how this system, it was supposed to make it easier for people to go to college, but it's created some really tricky problems too.
What's really interesting is how throughout this whole history, the focus has been on getting more people into college. But we haven't really dealt with the bigger issues like how to make it affordable and what all this debt does to people in the long run.
Right, it's like we've decided that everyone has to go to college, but we haven't figured out how to make it work financially for everybody.
One of the articles you sent me made this really interesting point. It said that this idea of college being a necessity instead of a luxury, it's actually made student loan debt seem normal. Like it's just part of getting ahead in life.
It's true. We've been told for so long that you need a college degree to be successful that we don't even question the cost anymore.
Exactly. And that way of thinking, plus the fact that loans are so easy to get, it's let colleges keep raising their prices way faster than inflation. They know students will find a way to pay, even if it means going deep into debt.
It's like a trap that's hard to escape.
It is. And in the 1980s, this trend just gets worse. The Reagan administration cuts funding for higher education, so students and their families have to pay even more.
And that's when student loan debt really explodes, right?
Yep. By the late 1980s, students are borrowing almost 3 times as much as they did just 10 years earlier, and almost half of all college grads are leaving school with debt. That's a huge change from earlier generations when borrowing for college was much less common.
And the banks, they were making a ton of money off this whole situation, right?
Oh yeah, they had practically zero risk. The more students borrowed, the more they made. It was a system that seemed to work for everyone except the people actually taking out the loans.
And then to make matters worse, we have the 2008 financial crisis. The economy tanks, unemployment skyrockets, and suddenly that good debt everyone was talking about doesn't seem so good anymore.
Yeah, it was a harsh reminder that the student loan system, it's not separate from the rest of the economy. When things go bad, people with student loans are some of the hardest hit. They're stuck with debt they can't afford, and they can't find jobs to help them get back on track.
So that brings us to the Obama era. One of your sources mentioned that Obama was different from a lot of politicians. He was open about his own experience with student loans. He and Michelle had just finished paying off their law school loans when he became president.
Yeah, that's right. And that personal experience probably influenced his administration's attempts to change the student loan system. They passed a major piece of legislation, the Healthcare and Education Reconciliation Act of 2010.
Wow, that's a long one. So what did it actually do?
Well, remember how we talked about the idea back then that the government wasn't good at managing loans? Well, the Obama administration decided to do the opposite. They got rid of the guaranteed student loan program. They cut out the banks and made it so the federal government would lend the money directly to students.
No more Sally Mae, no more banks making money off government-backed loans. That sounds like a good thing for students.
It seemed like it, but the thing is, it didn't fix the root of the problem. Tuition was still skyrocketing, and students were still taking on huge amounts of debt.
So it was like treating the symptoms, but not the actual disease. And we know that the student loan crisis has only gotten worse since then.
Exactly. Getting rid of the banks didn't change the things that were driving up costs and pushing students deeper into debt.
It seems like every time we try to fix the system, we just create new problems, or we don't actually solve the real issues. So where does that leave us?
Oh, that's a whole other deep dive. But one thing's for sure. The debate about student loans is far from over. People are still fighting about affordability, accessibility, and fairness, and there are no easy answers.
It's a reminder that even when we try to do the right thing, there can be unintended consequences. And solving big problems like this takes a lot of careful thought, open discussion, and a willingness to change and adapt.
If we really want to make higher education affordable and accessible for everyone, we need to be willing to question our assumptions, learn from the past, and come up with new ideas for the future.
That's a great point. And as you continue to learn about student loans, keep asking those tough questions. Challenge the way things are, and fight for solutions that will make the system fairer for everybody. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it helpful and interesting. And don't forget to subscribe to our show for more fascinating explorations of the issues that matter most. Until next time.